Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about my test day experience when taking the MCAT. I'm going to talk about my test day experience with my 503 test attempt, as well as my test day experience with the 517 test attempt, and how those two experiences ended up being quite different on test day. With my 503 test experience, I ended up taking the test 15 minutes away from my house. However, I will say that the test center, it ended up being quite full. And it had anywhere from like 20 to 30 students in the center. And I remember I got pretty nervous and I didn't know how to control my anxiety very well on test day at all. So I unfortunately let the nerves get the best of me, which is why I got the score I ended up getting, and I wasn't too happy with it when I scored that in May of 2021. I would describe that the test experience on May of 2021, it was quite nerve-wracking and I had no idea what was going on. I know that when you get to the test center, they actually have you take a picture of yourself. That way they can ensure that you're the real person who's taking the test, and they have you present your ID and stuff like that. It kind of felt like being at the DMV. It felt very procedural, and for some reason that just stressed me out more when I was taking the test when it came to the 503. And it didn't really help that there were too many people there as well. I heard a lot of background noise when it came to taking my exam. So that kind of got me a bit distracted, given that there were people getting up and then sitting down and then getting back up all at different times. Because another thing important to note when you take the MCAT is that not everybody is going to take the test exactly at the same time. The proctor needs to get one of you at a time, so your test times end up being staggered. So people will start getting up and taking breaks right when you're about 5 minutes from finishing one section of the exam. So it could be potentially distracting, and that's why you really need to zone in when you're taking the test. So I would say that when I took my 503 exam, I took it at a bigger test center, and I felt a lot more nervous because there were more people there, and I felt like I was competing against those people directly. It kind of scared me to see the competition directly in that regard. I hate to refer it that way, but it is true that the MCAT, it's a test in which you're competing against other students in order to become the best. That's how you end up getting those top percentiles. Now, I will tell you, when it came to my 517 attempt, my test experience was different. And I think that was why I ended up scoring 517, which is the motivation behind me creating this video, because my test day experience most likely played a very huge factor as to why I ended up scoring a 517. Let me explain. So when I scored a 517, I ended up driving at a test center that I was an hour away from my house. This test center, it was in a very small, secluded, but very nice area. And the test center was so small that it only accommodated 10 students total. Keep in mind that Pearson is the organization that hosts the tests for the MCAT, whereas the AAMC is the organization that administers the test. So people who were at the Pearson organization the day I took my 517, I would say there was about 5 people there who were taking tests independent of the MCAT. Because I know Pearson also administers tests related to teaching as well as related to computer skills and stuff like that. So 5 people, they weren't even there taking the MCAT. They were doing completely different tests. Whereas the other 5 of us were there strictly for the MCAT. And I remember when I got to the test center, it was a more laid back experience and it just felt a lot less stressful, which I think contributed to me getting a 517 on the exam. There was less people, so there was less people getting up, taking breaks, and I was able to focus a lot better on the test. And I remember when I took breaks, the building was so small, I could just get out and walk around it once to really clear my mind and just to focus on the exam when I needed to again. Whereas when I took my 503 attempt, I could go outside, but for some reason I didn't feel too relieved. I guess because the environment was a lot smaller, more intimate, I felt like I could succeed a lot more. That just might be me, but I think it's important to mention because something to consider when you're taking your MCAT is the size of your test center. If you're someone who thrives in a smaller, quiet, more intimate environment, it might be worthwhile to investigate the test centers that are listed on the AAMC and to go out and drive and to visit the Pearson Center and take a look to see how big or small the center is. If the center is bigger, chances are it's going to accommodate more students on test day. And if you're fine taking a test in a bigger center, it might be closer to your house, then go ahead and do it. But maybe it might be worth it to drive out a little bit more to take your test at a smaller center where you feel like you won't be distracted as easily. That's my advice when it comes to the MCAT, and it's not conventional advice that I hear, but it is something that helped me out improve on the exam. I hope that this quick video ended up helping, and I know many of my students who I tutor were curious about my test day experience, because when I took my 503 exam, I'm not gonna lie, I felt like I did not come out feeling that great after taking the test. But when I took my 517, I had a pretty good feeling that I killed it on every section, even though there were hard questions that I didn't know. So I felt a lot more confident, and I only focused on one section at a time. Anyway, that was all I wanted to share. In the meantime, happy studying and take care.